The presentation that I use will have links to the information and the tools that I talk about, and you'll have a copy of the presentation available to you after today. So before I get into kind of the practical side of the process, I think it's worthwhile just stating exactly who Ucas are and what we do. So we are an independent charity, so we are not part of the government, we don't work for the universities. We're an independent charity, and our aim is to help people gain access to higher education. So the main way that we do that is by running the undergraduate admission service. And that's what I'll be talking you through today, talking you through the kind of the practicality of it, the timeline, what needs to be done when, and sort of hints and tips around that. Alongside running the application service, we also provide information, advice, guidance, and support for students, but also for universities, for teachers, for parents, anybody who's involved with the process. All of the information and guidance that we offer is completely impartial, and our aim is to help people make an informed decision which is right for them. And I'm going to talk a little bit at the start about research and understanding what to apply for and the kind of requirements for that. And hopefully as we go through this evening's presentation, you'll understand not only the kind of the importance of research, but you'll also be armed with the tools to go out and support effective research for people applying to university. It's worthwhile just noting the last point on the board there, Ucas, we are effectively the admissions service, but we don't make any decisions on any applications. We don't advise students where to apply to or what to apply for, what to study. We're also not responsible for any element of student finance. However, through our website, ucas.com, there is links to a lot of these information points. So for students applying for higher education in the UK, we run the admission service across the 4 countries of the UK for approximately 350 different course providers. So there's a huge amount of choice available to students when they're considering their options. And I'm going to go through in a moment what students can apply for and the kind of the limits on the application. But the first point to really stress is that when students are considering higher education, there's a huge kind of breadth and depth of choice available to them. So it's really important they're kind of doing research, they're understanding the full range of options. And it's quite likely that students will come across courses, or they'll be looking to apply for courses that perhaps they haven't studied before, perhaps they haven't heard before. So doing research into what to apply for or where to apply to is really going to help them make a strong application. As I said, research is the kind of the fundamentally the most important part of the process, but it's the first step. Once students are in a position to do so, they can start their application. I said I'm going to work through the timeline as we go through tonight's session. As part of the application, students will have to write a personal statement. This is something you might have heard of before, and I'm going to give you some kind of practical hints and tips for writing or supporting strong personal statements, writing personal statements, so you feel confident supporting people when they come to draft theirs. Once they've done the application, once they've done the personal statement, they've submitted it all across to Ucas. They will then wait to receive decisions on their application, and they do that through our online system, and they track their application, track all of their offers and decisions as they go through. So the application form is a digital application done via our website, ucas.com. And at the end of the presentation, there are links to all of the relevant pages. But so the application said it is digital. We've created online, and through their application, students are able to select a maximum of 5 choices. And a choice is a course at a university or college. Now, students may very well have 5 courses they want to apply for, and that's great, but they don't have to apply for 5. If there's only 2 or 3 that they're interested in, that's absolutely fine. They can apply for 2 or 3. If they then submit their application and suddenly they think, oh, actually, I wish I'd applied for a different course, they can add choices once the application has gone live. The application is really flexible in terms of what they can apply for, with the exception of the restrictions listed there on screen. So students considering medicine or veterinary science or dentistry can only apply for 4 of these choices. Simple reason for this is these courses are highly selective, highly competitive to get onto. It allows students, if they want to have a kind of 5th choice in a backup subject or a related subject if they want to. Students considering applying for either Oxford or Cambridge can only apply to one of these and not both. Again, this is nothing to do with anything purely logistical. Students, if they could apply to both, the theory is that lots of students would apply for both. And when you apply to Oxford and Cambridge, there's often a rigorous kind of selection process, including interviews, including additional assessments and exams. So it's purely a logistical thing. As mentioned at the start, Ucas, we are a charity, so we do charge a small application fee for students wishing to apply. So they'll either pay £22 or £26.50. So it's £22 for a single choice or £26.50 if they're applying for multiple choices. The last 2 points on the board are really important. I think if you take anything away from tonight, it would be these 2 things. So firstly, equal consideration means that if a student applies on or before the given deadlines for their courses, the providers they're applying to are guaranteed to equally consider their application alongside all others they receive. So really, really important if you're supporting a young person through the process, they understand their deadline, they know the importance of it, they know when it is, and they know what they need to do before they meet that deadline. Invisibility, as the name suggests, basically means that if somebody applies to 2 or more providers, they won't know where else they've applied to, and therefore the providers won't have any influence on any decision made on the application. So the timeline is really important. So as it talks about the equal consideration deadline, it's really important that students applying or considering applying for university know the deadlines, they know what they need to do when. So for the timeline on screen is for the 2022 application cycle. So this is primarily courses starting in the autumn of 2022. So last Tuesday, the 18th, was the first day that students were able to register and start the application process. They can start filling in their profile, they can start completing and drafting their personal statement and doing things that they need to. They can't actually submit their application until early September. But what they can be doing now proactively is creating their Ucas profile if they haven't done so already, going through and completing all of the different sections within the application, which I'll talk you through in a moment. They can also be starting to draft their personal statement, start thinking about where they want to apply, and really getting themselves in a good position, ready to submit their application from September. The first application deadline to be aware of is the 15th of October deadline, and this is for courses in medicine, dentistry, and veterinary science, and the universities of Oxford and Cambridge. Then the majority of students will apply for courses. So there's a typo there. I will amend that before I send it out. The majority of students will be applying for a course as the 15th of January deadline for their course. If a student's unsure what deadline their course has, what they need to do is go on to ucas.com, log into the Hub account, search for their course, and it will say in big bold writing the information and the course application deadline. Students are able to apply after these deadlines right up until the 30th of June. However, if someone's applying after a deadline, they need to make sure that the course provider they're applying to are happy to receive a late application. Some are, some won't, but to be guaranteed their application is considered equally alongside all of their peers, they need to make sure they're applying on their given deadline. Now, as you can see, there's a couple of quite heavy caveats on this page. All of these dates, as we sit here tonight, are true and are set. However, last year we had to change the January deadline due to the lockdowns, and we kind of stand ready to respond to, I guess, any further lockdowns, anything that requires a change in the dates or deadlines. And what I'll do at the end of this presentation is to signpost to you how you as a parent can stay up to date with the latest information from Ucas. And there's a newsletter which I'll direct you to sign up to, which will help you stay up to date with any changes. As you can also see, all of the deadlines are 6 o'clock UK time. So really, really important students understand that. And if they submit their application at 1 minute past 6, that is late. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 minute late or 10 days late, it will still be shown as late to the universities. So for students to, when they're applying, they go to our website, ucas.com. From there, they need to create a Ucas Hub account. Through their Hub account, they're able to do their research. So they're able to search for courses. They're able to read about a course. They can read about the course information, the entry requirements for a course, the course deadlines. They can look at the types of career options available to graduates in those subjects. This is all through the Ucas Hub account. What they can also do, or what they also do through the Hub, is they apply through Ucas. So this is where they create their application. When they click on the Start button, they'll be taken through a setup wizard. And if they are applying from a school or college or a sixth form centre, then what they can do is they can link their application to their centre so that teachers and tutors are able to view their application, are able to check it, they're able to support it, and ultimately they're able to write a reference in support of the application and then submit the application on behalf of the student. The way that students do this, the way that they link their application, is by putting in a buzzword. A buzzword will be given to them by the teachers. Once they put in the buzzword, it allows them to link, and then, as I said, that visibility for both teachers is there. So once students have registered, they've linked their application, they'll be presented with this profile page. As you see, the status bar at the top, as they work their way through the application, they'll get a progress update. Once they've got it to 100%, they're in a position to submit. The vast majority of the sections on the application are very self-explanatory. They are asking students basic information, basic personal information, basic contact information. They're asking questions about either work experience. This is paid for work, so not kind of the unpaid work experience or volunteering students might have done. There's also a section on education. This is clearly really important for students applying for a higher education course. So this is where students will put all of the qualifications they have or will have by the time they start their higher education course. So for the majority of students applying, they'll apply with pending qualifications, either A-levels or BTECs, and the school that they apply through are able to provide predicted grades in support of the application. I'm going to go through in a moment and talk you through the personal statement and give some kind of real practical hints and tips about writing a strong personal statement. But one kind of note of warning on the profile, on the basic information. Every single year, about 10% of all applications that were submitted through Ucas have a mistake within the personal details section. So this could be something as simple as providing incorrect contact information. It might be spelling their name incorrectly. It might be giving it's kind of a known by name rather than a full name. It's really important that students are being encouraged to enter this information accurately, because it can cause issues with the application later down the line if the information we have isn't correct. So, and I'm going to talk about the personal statement, and this is something you may have heard of already if you have heard of Ucas and considered the application process. The personal statement is a blank text box which allows students to stand out from their peers when they're applying. It allows them to tell a university why they should be considered, why they should be offered a place on a course. A couple of the practical things to be aware of: there is no inbuilt spelling or grammar check, so it's important that students are being accurate with this. It's a very small piece of work. 4,000 characters sounds like a lot, but it's characters, not words. So students need to make sure they're being precise and concise with their language. In terms of what it looks like, this is a visual representation of the personal statement within the application. In terms of what to include in the content, I'm going to go through and provide some top tips in a moment. But it's important that students are understanding what the personal statement is being used for. So it allows them to stand out from their peers. It allows them to demonstrate they are, suitable for the course. And there's lots of different ways to do this. Best advice around a personal statement I can offer is if students do research into what it is they want to study, they will be able to write a targeted and focused personal statement. So by doing research, students will be able to collate information, collate evidence, which they'll then be able to put in to a strong personal statement. There's lots of different things, lots of different ways to research and to provide evidence. I'm not going to go through each one of these in turn, but hopefully it gives you a flavour of the types of things that students might want to consider when writing a personal statement. If a student looks at the courses they're interested in, they'll be able to see quite clearly the types of skills, the types of knowledge that universities and colleges are looking for. Really, really important that students do that research, they take the research they do and they lead it in to a strong, effective personal statement. Students need to remember they only have one personal statement to cover all 5 of their choices. So if they are applying for 5 different courses at 5 different universities, they need to make sure their personal statement is suitable for all of their choices. A couple of simple ways to do this, a couple of sort of pointers around the personal statement. The first one, I think this is the most important one, is have a clear structure. So in the personal statement, you should break it down into 3 clear chunks. Chunk 1, about 30%, an introduction saying why the student's applying, outlining their motivation, and really setting this all out from the start why they are applying for that course. Then the main chunk of the statement should be that evidence that we've talked about, which demonstrates they are the right person, the right candidate for the application. They then want to finish with a small chunk at the end as the conclusion, and like a final endorsement, saying what reaffirming the reasons for applying. Lots and lots of different ways to do this. There's no perfect personal statement. There's lots of different things, lots of different ways to do it, lots of different approaches. But it's really, really important students remember to articulate why they are applying. A couple of real no-nos in terms of personal statements. Often we see students who've done lots and lots of things they want to tell universities about. So what they do is they write a bullet point list. This isn't easy to read. This isn't engaging. So students need to focus on quality of information they're putting into the statement and not write lists. They don't need to talk about everything they've ever done. Just a couple of things that are really important, really help them stand out, will do. Really important that students don't leave it to the last minute as well. So students can start drafting their statement from today. They don't even have to have registered to start drafting their statement. Write it in Word, start drafting in Word. When they're happy with it, copy it across. As a parent, what you can be doing is checking statements, reading it through them, giving them pointers, helping them feel confident that the statement is serving the purpose that it needs to do. They're applying for an academic course, so it is important they're not making too many sort of spelling or grammar mistakes. There might be one or two, but it's really important to be as accurate as possible. Couple of ways to do this. As I said, there's no perfect way to do a statement. I'm not, an expert by any means, but if they remember the ABC rule, it will really help them stay on point, stay on message. So if a student's talking about an activity, an assessment, an achievement, anything at all that they've done, then what they need to make sure they're doing is linking it to what benefits has that activity brought them, and then crucially linking it to the course they're applying for. So if they've learned, say, maybe team working skills from playing football, how is that relevant for maybe a business management course? Well, it could be that part of the business management course is group assignments, group work, where students will be required to work as part of a team. If a student's done the research, they found out that their business course requires you to work in groups, they're then able to link it. They really are showing the admissions tutors they're applying to that they are, not only have they done the research, but they are the right person, for the course, and will really help them stand out from other people applying. To summarise it, keep it as simple as possible. When you're reading through someone's statement, if they are clearly explaining why they're applying and why they're right for the course, then they won't be going too far wrong. Lots and lots of different ways to do that, but by providing evidence, you're making sure that you are writing a really, really strong statement. So to summarise then, before I open the floor to questions, I know they've had a few come in already. Really, really important that we're supporting students to do effective research into their application, making sure that the courses they're applying for are the right courses for them, and understanding that universities are all independent. They all set their own course, they set their own structure, they set their own assessment. So just because 2 universities offer the same course in title doesn't necessarily mean that the course will have any similarities at all. So proper research will really help. Proper research will lead to considered appropriate choices. It will also then lead to strong personal statements, which ultimately is what we're looking for to support applications. Mentioned the timeline, really important that students are working towards that, from today, understanding what they need to do when. If they're applying through a school or college, do the school or college have their own internal deadlines? Most of them do, so need to make sure they're working towards that. And then preparation for plan B. This is just sound life advice. Students need to make sure that they have a backup plan. So it might be a backup university, it might be a backup course, but it might be considering an apprenticeship or something completely different as well. In terms of things that you can be doing now as a parent, as a student, go on to ucas.com, register for the hub. The hub is where students will find all the information they need, but it's also where they do their application. So the hub is a great place to start. It provides tailored, focused information for students to do their application. I'd recommend that if you don't do so already, you follow Ucas on social media. We do lots of live events, information events on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. So do follow us on there if you haven't done so already. I'd also recommend the signing up for the newsletter, which I mentioned earlier. If you click on that link, it will take you to the sign up page and it will allow you to stay up to date with changes and our communications. Hopefully, I've given you a sort of a base layer of understanding for the timeline and what's required. But if you aren't sure, go on to ucas.com. There's a section there for parents, which I'll link to on the next page, and you can understand everything that's required. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate there's lots of information there. Some of us said very happy to take questions. I just wanted to flag our Customer Experience Centre. So these guys are on hand Monday to Friday, right the way throughout the year, able to give tailored, impartial information to support you and your children through the application process. There's the link to to ucas.com, where we've got links to the hub, links to all the information that you need to support your students. There's also here the link to the parent and guardian information page on ucas.com. This has all the tailored information for parents, including a link to the parents guide. Lots of great information there, lots of practical advice and guidance to support you in supporting your children. Thank you very much. I hope you found that useful. There's, as I said, lots of information, so I'm very happy to answer questions, take questions if people have them.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Yes, if some people might not be able to use the chat,
okay,
by all means, it's whatever you prefer. But if you put up your hand, or we can get to you. And I think someone already has a question in the chat. Now that I say that, if you're applying for courses,
putting your hand down, going on.
Don't go to it.
How are you going to know what people are saying?
Oh, we will get to people with their hands up. The first question that I spotted in the chat was, if you're applying for courses with similar content but different names, for example, biology, zoology, biological sciences, how do you mention this in your personal statement?
So it's a good question. It's something which, when talking about sort of top tips, considered choices in the application is really important. So you only have one statement, personal statement, which needs to sort of cover all 5 or all of the choices you put on your application. So courses like biology, zoology, biological sciences, they have some things in common which you can link to. A couple of ways to make sure that you're not kind of, I guess, sort of putting yourself in a disadvantaged situation. Don't mention, if you are applying for different subjects, you don't want to be too explicit with how you talk about them within your statement. You also don't want to specifically mention a course by title or a university unless it's sort of relevant to the point you're making in your statement. Subjects like biology and biological sciences have a very natural kind of tie and kind of the skills and the knowledge that universities will be expecting to see will have kind of very natural overlap. So that type of thing I wouldn't worry about too much. It's very common for students to apply to the variant of the same course. Corey, I hope that answers your question. if it doesn't, on the ucas.com website, there is a page about personal statements, and in that there's a blog by students whose name escapes me at the moment, but she talks about folks writing a statement for different subjects, which I would recommend you read if you have a spare 5 minutes.
That's great. Thank you, Charlie. We have a hand up from, and please, I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Eshal, would you like to ask your question? You can just unmute. Thank you.
Yes. Hi. Good afternoon. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Basically, I just wanted to check. I've actually put that question on in the chat as well, that if we or someone is interested in applying for the medicine but going through the BTech route,
Yeah.
I mean, how can we find that information, and how should we go for that?
So each individual course provider, so in this case medical schools, will have their own entry requirements, which they will publish very clearly on both their website, but also through the Ucas website. So if you go to ucas.com, you can search for course information. You'll need to look at each course provider in turn, but if you find the course, so you type in medicine, type in the provider that you're interested in, it'll bring up the course information. Within that, there will be explicit entry requirements, and they'll say what they're looking for in terms of qualifications. If you look at that and you're not clear whether that is kind of relevant, or you're not sure whether the person you're supporting has the right qualifications, best advice I can offer is just contact them directly and ask the question. Universities, medical schools all have teams of admissions sort of professionals who are kind of there ready to take those types of questions. Okay,
thank you for that. And what you mentioned in the beginning, that one can only apply up to 4 institutions for if they want to apply for the medicine.
Yes.
So we can just choose the 4 institutions which would be offering this route and just apply through that directly that way.
Yeah, so on the Ucas application, they'd select the 4 medicine courses they want to apply for. Right. And if they then somebody wants to apply to a 5th choice in, say, biological sciences or biomedical sciences, they can do that if they want to. There's only 4 sort of straight medicine courses they're able to apply for.
Okay, that's clear out. So basically, they can still apply for 5, but medical should be only 4. The 5th one could be something else, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We also have Stuart with your hand up.
Hi there, thank you. Hi Charlie, Stuart here. Yeah, I have a question. So my son, his current predicted grades are a bit lower than the course expectations or requirements.
Yeah.
And I think he's feeling a bit kind of, put off by the situation that the school won't support him properly. So do you have any advice on how we should proceed in this case?
Yeah, so predicted grades are kind of one part of the application. So when a student applies, universities will look at predicted grades, but they'll also look at the student's personal statement. They'll look at their GCSE performance as well. They look at the reference on the application. So just because your son may think they don't have the predicted grades required doesn't mean they are not able to get an offer on a course. So I would, if he's really worried about it and he's massively below the published entry requirements, best advice I would offer is speak to, you can do it anonymously, or you can do it on his behalf before he applies. Speak to the universities and say, I know somebody who's thinking of applying. This is what we think they're predicted. What would your advice be? And then universities will be able to give you kind of specific advice to that. Universities have what we call like the published entry requirements, which are it's sort of, I guess, a guide price to entry. But each and every year they are kind of flexible with that, and they can make a variety of different offers, not just based off predicted grades, but also set off personal statement, off references, off other kind of contextual information as well. So just because he doesn't have the grades, I would still say you can still kind of pursue it, speak to them, ask questions, make sure his personal statement's up to speed, make sure he applies on time, it does all of the other kind of basics as accurately as possible.
Okay. And I guess there's opportunities through clearing as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so clearing is kind of the last section of the application process. So it starts in July every year and runs through to October, and each year in clearing, tens of thousands of places are kind of secured, and in clearing, entry requirements can fluctuate depending on its kind of supply and demand, really. So sometimes entry requirements are lower in the clearing, sometimes they're higher. It's very much kind of reactive to what's happening. But yeah, predicted grades are just a small part of the whole application, so I wouldn't get too, unless they are, you know, way below the I wouldn't be too put off.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Charlie. We have various questions in the chat, and we have some that were pre-submitted. I was just going to answer one for you.
Okay.
One of the parents or carers had queried if a student is not living with their parents. So if someone is the one who asked this, hopefully this applies to you. Someone asked if they're living with grandparents and not their parents, how does it count in terms of income and how is that assessed? So I asked on your behalf, the person who submitted that question, and it may be relevant to other people here. I asked our contact with Student Loan Company, and the short answer is that unless the student is estranged from their parents, and you actually have to have written documentation of more than 4 months that they are no longer living or have any support from their parents financially or otherwise, unless they're estranged, then the parent is seen, or carer in that case, seen as responsible, and therefore it is their income that is counted. The only way a grandparent's income would be counted is, again, if they're estranged from the parents, but the grandparents are their legal guardians. But if they're just temporarily living with their grandparents, then the parents are still, it's their income that they need to put down on the student loan application. So I hope for whoever asked that, I hope that answers your question. And we have loads of questions. Whatever we do not get to tonight, we will have them typed up anyways, and we will be able to submit some of the answers when we send a feedback form for you to fill in. Thank you. I know we had one asking about how the point system works, so you might want to explain that one, Charlie.
Yeah, sure. So the Ucas tariff system is basically a tool which allows universities to broadly compare different qualifications. So what we call level 3 qualifications, so BTEC, A-level, level 3 qualifications, and it assigns their points value to different attainment levels in these qualifications. Now, lots of people kind of worry about the tariff and kind of get quite hung up on it. It's the primary purpose of it is to allow admissions teams at universities to be able to compare different qualifications from different parts of the UK. Only 1/3, so a third of UK universities will actively make offers based off tariff points. So, you know, 2/3 will make offers just based on the information they receive. Students who are, you know, in the process of taking qualifications will be working towards their individual attainment levels. And it said if a student gets an A star, they get a certain amount of points. If they get an A, get a certain amount of points, and it works its way down there. It's something which I personally feel it gets kind of people worried lots about, and that people trying to find lots of different ways to get points. But usually, when a tariff-based offer is made, it will be a university will say you need to get X number of points from 3 A levels or from your BTEC qualification and your 1 A level. So it's something that is designed to be used by universities. Obviously, students will kind of use it and kind of think about it. But please don't get too het up about it. If you are, you know, if your son or daughter's worried about it, tell them not to worry. The best thing they can do is focus on doing as best they can in the qualifications that they're taking. I saw there's a question in the chat. Does paid work get extra points? So no, points on the tariff will only get awarded for academic qualifications taken at level 3, which is, you know, A level or equivalent.
Thank you, Charlie. There's another question in the chat, which was, what is an admissions test and which courses or universities require one?
So an admissions test is something that a course provider, so university or college, will ask a student to take in addition to the qualifications that they're already taking. So in the main, admissions tests are there for things like medicine, dentistry. Oxford and Cambridge have admissions tests. Some of the more highly sort of selective and competitive courses will have admissions tests. When students are doing their research into courses, as part of the course information and the entry requirements, it will say very clearly what admissions test they want students to take, and it will link to how they sign up for it. If a student is required to take an admissions test, they need to be kind of thinking about that now. So, so a lot of the medicine admissions tests, you have to sit them over the summer. The results are released in the autumn in time for the application. So there are different types of admissions tests. I will find a link and put it in the chat, the information page on our website. But each individual course provider will set their own requirements in terms of admissions tests. But hopefully that answers that question. It's it can vary hugely, and a student who's applying for medicine at 4 different providers may be required to take multiple admissions tests depending on what they're applying for. But I'll just put a link in the chat there for further information about admissions tests.
Thank you so much. We had a pre-question.
Yeah.
I do see there's a hand up. I'll get to you in a minute. We had a pre-question about SEN and whether or not if a child has a EHCP that are supported in school, if these apply at university. And actually just last week we had a webinar from someone from student support, and I can answer that question for you, that EHCPs don't automatically get pushed over into university. However, most of what a young person would need, or any student actually would need the EHCP for, any support they're receiving in school, most of that is accepted and offered at university. In terms of the process, the main thing is for when you're applying to student finance to apply for what they call disability student allowance to see if there's any extra support and money available, but equally put it in on their Ucas application that they have a special needs if the student is happy to do so, because that can be, it won't go against them, but it can be flagged with the university that they will need extra support, and then the student support from whatever universities they've applied for, once they've got their offer, they will reach out to them. Equally, if you know exactly which university your the son or daughter has been accepted in, they can contact that university and the student support at that university, and again they can work out whether or not they get extra time or what other kind of support they would have in exams, and everything will be put in place for them. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see who had their hand up.
There's a question in the chat from Mike Bolton about if student wants to take a gap year, which I can real quick answer to. So it's 2 options. Students can either apply when they're in school and college, and when they select their choice, they can put the start date. So they could put for this year, they could put 2023 if they wanted to. If they do it that way, then they'll be applying whilst they're at school, so they will get the support of their teachers and the tutors, and all of the kind of in-class support that school or colleges might offer. What they can do is they can wait until they finish school and then apply when the cycle reopens or opens again for 2023 next May, so in a year's time. So there's 2 options.
We have a question from M. Welsh.
Okay.
Yes, hello, that's me. Thank you for your time. Charlie, a question for you. I was just wondering, I'm assuming we've all got year 12 students and that's why we're here. And I was just wondering why, how much will universities be taking into account the lack of schooling, given the current pandemic, on grades and what they expect? Are their expectations still going to be as high as they usually would? Or
So,
I appreciate everyone's in the same boat.
yeah.
But, you know, from year 12, they've literally had a quarter of the schooling with teachers than they would normally have had. I'm just wondering what universities are thinking with regards to that.
Yeah, so universities and the kind of higher education sector as a whole are obviously very aware of the situation over the last 12, 18 months and the cancellation of exams last year in the school and the lockdowns and the kind of the knock-on effect on to this year. You've also got students who your year 12s this year missed their GCSEs and they missed a big chunk of year 12. They are taking it all into consideration. They are working sort of collaboratively, I guess, across the sector to making sure that they all have not necessarily the same approach, but I guess a joined up approach to make sure that they are setting the same kind of expectations. They're doing what they can to support students through the process, because it's obviously not just the kind of academic side, it's the social side, it's all of the other things that you learn at school and college that has been affected, I guess. And they are taking it into consideration, and they are I guess taking into consideration. I'm not saying they're going to be wildly changing any entry requirements, but they will probably be more forgiving and more open to look at individual cases on a sort of individual granular level than perhaps would have done previously. I think there's a big part for teachers and sort of tutors to play in school in terms of the reference and kind of that context. So we know that across the UK there's been huge variance in terms of like sort of the digital teaching available. Some schools were able to kind of switch almost overnight to remote teaching and are able to, all of the kids would have had laptops or phones and access to stuff, and other schools there would have been much different in terms of access. So we were asking teachers to provide context in the reference to make sure that someone looking at an application has as much information as possible. And it's a real concern. There's no kind of getting away from it. It's everybody's in a similar situation, but it's not necessarily the same, is it? It's a tricky one, and it's an ongoing issue, and I don't think there's a simple answer, unfortunately.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I think what's lacking in year 12 students is the confidence that they would have had having sat exams and passed them rather than get their predicted grades. I know I'm finding that in my sense. So
yeah, definitely. So real concern, and said unfortunately it's not a simple answer.
Thank you. There was a question on the deadline.
Yeah.
I'm understanding that it's January, but I know this year it moved, so I didn't want to put the exact date in January because I wasn't sure it was going to move again.
Yeah. So as we see here today, the application deadline for on-time applications is the 15th of January 2022. We kind of are continually monitoring the whole landscape, the environment, whatever you want to call it, and if things happen that means we need to change it, then we would do so as early as possible and communicate out as clearly and as widely as possible. So that parents newsletter link, which I shared in the presentation, I recommend that anyone watching this tonight signs up to that. So if anything does change, you'll get an email from Ucas directly saying the date's changed. But students can apply up to that January deadline, but then they can also apply after the January deadline up until the end of June. But if they apply after the on-time deadline, universities aren't guaranteed to consider their application, although many do. We recommend that you apply on or before the deadline.
Great, thank you. We had so many questions. We're just about to finish. I know that one of the pre-questions that we received was, what other support do students or parents have other than through school? Now, we work very closely with our local schools, and we know that schools do an exceptional job at supporting students with schools and colleges at supporting their students with applications. Tonight, Charlie has mentioned the Ucas website, which is a wealth of knowledge, as excellent pages. Equally, if there are specific universities that you already know your son or daughter are interested in, contact them directly. They're usually very happy to answer any queries. And there are many excellent websites that offer advice as well. You need to actually just Google, see which ones are out there, but make sure that they are within the UK and that they're reputable. So there's a few that are listed on our actual Aspire Higher website, and I'm sure there'll be some great links also on the Study Higher website. I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to all the pre-questions. Like I said, we will be sending some of those answers along with the feedback form, but if you do have time and it's easier for you to do so, please do fill in the link is there in our chat for the actual feedback form. It's extremely short. It would take you less than a minute, but it would be very much appreciated. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Charlie?
No, the other thing in terms of information support, if you follow Ucas, if you're on social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, where we kind of put out a lot of information, a lot of advice, a lot of hints and tips as you work through the cycle. If you're on those platforms, it'd be good to follow us